Wet'suwet'en, thank you for joining us. I'm Paris Wise. In the Black Hills of South Dakota, an underground lab now occupies what was once North America's largest gold mine. Oglala Lakota artist Marty Two Bulls Jr. shares his experience and the impact of mining on his people with ICT producer Shirley Sneevy.
The Black Hills have always been sacred to the Oceti Sakowin. The Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 established the Great Sioux Reservation. The Black Hills were central to this land deal until Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer led an expedition in 1874. Its mission was to find a location for a fort and investigate rumors of gold. Knowingly trespassing on land held by the tribes, Custer's action set off a gold rush. By 1876, the Homestake Gold Mine was established and large tracts of land taken. The mine closed in 2002. It became one of the world's largest underground laboratories, opening in 2006. Marty Two Bulls Jr. was its artist in residence this summer. The Sanford Underground Research Facility welcomed the Oglala Lakota citizen to make art inspired by his experience underground.
I learned that there are 300 miles of the mine underground. So for me, growing up, coming out here and seeing the open cut, that was always the image in my mind about what Homestake was. And, for me, it was very much always a symbol of desecration. It's really a difficult place to be and even visit. Consequently, I've spent almost no time in my life in Lead, although I grew up in the Black Hills area. And my perspective about this place and the history is different, being a Lakota person and, the impact that mineral and specifically gold extraction had to my people was very profound.
And now surf acknowledges the wrongs and harm it has inflicted on generations of indigenous people.
All the excavation that happens here, like they don't take any of the rock out. They're not excavating the way that they did at Homestake, but the excavations that they are doing, the rock stays here. They're not processing for gold, so they're not trying to find gold. They're not reselling like the excavated rock as like gravel that goes somewhere else. So the excavated rock actually goes into the open cut here, the open pit. As water becomes scarcer and scarcer, especially clean water, and there being such a long history and a Superfund site up here, surf is responsible for cleaning the water that comes out of the mine now that they've taken over from Homestake. So there's like an iron oxide in the water that makes it look red. It's not poisonous, but it just doesn't look the way we think of like clean water. So they even, pull the iron oxide out, so the water that comes out of the treatment facility is just, a clean, even just, looks clean water. So I think that was really, really, really interesting, and I'm curious to see where this garden, the garden that they put up here recently, where that goes. I think there's a lot of potential for the dialogue that can happen there. From artists and culture bearers and people from the community, and that's one thing that I've been really appreciative about is that openness to dialogue and conversation.
The garden is Chongaleshka Waka, meaning sacred circle. In the shape of the medicine wheel, its plants are sacred and indigenous to the Black Hills. Surf employee Mike Ray said Lakota elders guided surf in construction of the garden.
In the Cultural Advisory Committee recommended this as a site where we could have cross-cultural communication. Because we have scientists coming from all over the world to surf, many of them come here and want to know about this place. And we needed a place where we could provide that kind of, especially cross-cultural communication, in order to champion the values that we have here to, inspire learning across generations and advance world-class science.
As I'm getting older and, I was doing things like, working with the tribe, I feel more and more like an ambassador, and I talk to people outside of the community in different contexts like this, or through the surf residency, or through, these different interviews. And, the hard stuff seems to be where outsiders want to focus. They want to hear like the sad stories, and I feel like in a lot of ways that sort of serves a different narrative. For me, I think the thing that I try to, and I have to hold on to this myself too, are like you're saying, the good things, the good stories. And, I, one of the things that I've noticed in my short life and my short experiences with other tribes and other tribal communities in this country and in Alaska is, we still really have strong ties to our culture.
His exhibition opens October 25th at Black Hills State University in Spearfish. For ICT, from the land of the Lakota Oyate, I'm Shirley Snavy.
Nearly a century ago, a family road trip led to an unforgettable connection with the Hopi people. During her research, Hopi journalist Patty Talahongva made a stunning discovery: her great-grandmother's pottery from that very trip.
I'm actually writing a book about my family's experience at the Phoenix Indian School, and I also went to Phoenix Indian. And as we know, boarding school has had a huge impact on our families, and the divisions it's caused, the changes in culture, in religion, in language. So in this process of writing a book, you read everything you can get your hands on. And so in this process, my mother, she knew I was reading all kinds of things about Hopi life and, in that early time period. But what happened was we had a ceremony at our village in March of 2023. And I met Vivian Matsubo Shula for the very first time. And how I never met her before, I don't know. But I met Vivian during this ceremony. And I spent the whole day with her, sweet, sweet old lady. And when I told my mom I met Vivian, my mom handed me this book a few days later, and she said, "Hopi Summer, this is a book about Vivian's family." And so I said, "Oh, okay, this is interesting." And she said it was about a trip this family took in 1927. Carrie and Maud Melville were, I think, exceptional people in that they had this really great idea to go on a camping trip with their 3 kids and take them around the country. And their idea, he was a professor and she was also college educated. So they knew that by taking their kids on this road trip, the kids would learn about the country. And even though they missed, some school, the education they got on that journey would make up for it. Everywhere else on the map, they're strictly staying along the border, the eastern coast, the southern coast, but then they get to New Mexico and Arizona and they deviate and go north into the state, and they pass through some other tribal lands in New Mexico, and then they came to Hopi. The family had a friend who was a missionary at the Baptist church at Palaca. So they told their friend, "Well, go visit your aunt." So that was the plan, to spend 2 nights there, and they camped out. This was a big family camping trip. The mother made their sleeping bags. They had everything packed in that little trailer, their food, their cooking utensils, their sleeping bags, everything. And so they had planned to spend 2 nights at Hopi, but they met people and they created bonds very quickly that they ended up buying so many things like pottery, baskets, katsina dolls, clothing. So I started reading the book, and I was absolutely astounded when I got to a page that talked about the Melvilles being at Palaca and going up First Mesa. And on that particular day, according to the journal that Maud Melville wrote, her journal said they went up on the mesa and they bought pottery from Lucy Lalo's mother. And I about fell off the couch, as I was reading that sentence, because Lucy Lalo is my great-grandmother. And if they bought pottery from her mother, that would be my great-great-grandmother. I read the book as fast as I could, trying to figure out, where is this collection? Where is her pottery? And at the end of the book, I found out that the family donated the collection to Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. After I read that Wesleyan had the collections, I went online trying to find it, because quite often museums or institutions will have their collections online. And I found some obscure website that said I could create a free account and have access to the collections for 1 hour. So I created my account, I went through the collections, and I'm just zooming through the pages, and I was trying to find photographs of the pottery, because everything is noted, who made it and what style and all of that. And I found my great-great-grandmother's pottery online. And then when I started to close out that website, I found out that they had put it on the cover of this book. And so when Wesleyan acquired the collections, they created this book, and it has some history, and then in the back it has the collections, and it talks about every item and what they know about it. So I just I had to laugh, because here it was on the front cover of the book. And then we made the appointment to go to Wesleyan and see the collections. I just remember being in that room, and it was just, you could just feel it. It was just a library, and it was a man's library, dark wood shelves, and the books, all protected. And I could have cared less about what was on the walls around me. I was looking at the items on the tables that they put out, because that was my connection. That's the rare collection for me. And so we spent 2 days looking at the collections, looking at photographs, reading some letters, and 2 days was not enough. Absolutely not enough time, but that's what we had allotted, so then that was it. But that moment when Wendy, who is the director of the collections there, she had the items all set up. She looked at the number, and I looked over, and it was the largest pottery on the table. And oh my gosh, I went over to it, and she said, yes, this is it. And then I said, of course, because that's what the photo is on the cover of the book. And they let me pick it up, they let me hold it, and I just, tears were just coming down. I just can't describe that feeling of holding something that my great-great-grandmother made. And then I felt it, and I'm a potter too. I grew up making pottery. Something that large is hard to make, to balance it out. And it was so beautifully balanced. And then on the top part, instead of the walls going straight up, she turned them in. So there's a little bit of a lip. And I ran my fingers around the rim of the pottery, and I could feel her fingertips. I could feel how she made that. Oh. So I also felt very strongly that I could not be the only one in my family to see the pottery. And I told Wendy that and said, we have to bring this back to Hopi for a visit. We have to allow the other family, my mother, my uncles, who've never seen her pottery before, and the other potters, their descendants. What good is it doing on a shelf at a university, back east? How hard is it for us as the whole family to fly there? We've got elders. It's hard to travel. It's hard for them to travel from Hopi to Phoenix, let alone across the country. So better to bring the items back home for a visit. And that's what the ma'angwa auya means, let's go home for a visit. I was very fortunate that Wendy was on board, and she said, yes, let's figure out how to do this. So from last June to this June, we've been planning and putting it all together. And Wendy is pretty much a department of one. And I asked her, when is the soonest you can make this happen? Pick a date, any weekend, and we'll make it work. And so she picked the dates according to what her responsibilities were, with not just her job at the university, but her family obligations. It wasn't until the actual event that Bob Arnold, the grandson of the Melvilles who came to this event, told us it was June 21st, 1927, when his grandparents came to Hopi. So we landed to the date 97 years later without even actually planning that. It was just one of those happy coincidences. And we had so many of those moments throughout the weekend. We always knew that on Friday we'd have a special private family event. So the descendants of Guamana, my family, the descendants of Ruth Takala, and also the descendants of Ethel Matsuvo, they would be the first ones to see the entire collections that we brought out, the 31 items, and they would have a day to spend with them. And we also, as we discussed the planning, we didn't want this to be have any kind of barriers. So what that meant was the items were just on the table with, there was special museum approved padding on there, but the items were on the table. They weren't behind glass. They weren't, in a vitrine. They were just on the table, so people could walk up there, and if they wanted to touch the item, they could touch it. They could hold it, depending on how delicate it was. Most of the pottery was fine. They could pick up, but some of the other items, we said nobody can pick these up because they're so fragile. But that was the beauty, that people were able to touch the pottery, to look at it, to see the design on all sides of the pottery, and to really have that physical reconnection. And, I would turn around and there'd be somebody just weeping, it was so moving. And, and other people who were just in awe of what they were seeing from their great-great-grandmothers. And then Ruth Takala's great-granddaughters brought their own pottery, and they wanted to see, does my pottery live up to my great-great-grandmother's standards? And so they brought their own pottery to show side by side. And then they left it there for the whole weekend. And then to see the generations, to see Vivian, who brought, she brought her great-granddaughter to show her pottery that Vivian had never seen before. Because again, Vivian will be 93 this summer. This pottery was made in 97 years ago, so before she was even born. And yet, Vivian grew up with her mother making pottery, so she was familiar with her mother's pottery, but these particular ones were older than Vivian. And we did ask for their reactions, and so people wrote their feelings of what they liked about it, and over the top it was expressing gratitude that they could not just read about, but see and feel something that their ancestor made.
The Gila River Indian Community is making history with a solar panel project built over their canals. This innovative effort is set to combat climate change and conserve water. ICT's Daniel Herrera has more.
He specifically asked, so how's your solar project coming? Which I thought was pretty impressive. That of all that the president is responsible for.
Driving down the Loop 202 in Phoenix, Arizona, on the horizon, you can see the borders of the Gila River Indian Community. A tribal nation known for its innovation has just made history again.
This particular project, what we call the Casablanca Solar Over Canal Project, is about 3,000 feet long. It's on either side of Interstate 10, so it's highly visible to traffic, either east or westbound traffic going in or out of Phoenix. We project that we will generate about 1.3 megawatts of power.
The Gila River Indian Community has built a solar panel covered canal, the first ever in the Western Hemisphere. With tribal nations being on the front lines of climate change, it is becoming paramount to find ways to create renewable energies and avoid fossil fuels. George Cairo, the principal engineer of this design, said this project has many benefits, one of which is offsetting fossil fuels.
You really have to look at the source of energy that this solar energy offsets, right? And so depending on where you're getting your power, they have a portfolio. And so they may be getting energy from a coal-fired plant or something else. So if you're able to replace that energy with this green energy, you're also helping to combat climate change and conserve water as well.
The Sonoran Desert gets more than 300 days of sunshine a year, perfect for solar energy.
We have in excess of 250 miles of canal. If we were to cover even half of that with solar panels, we would have far more power than the community could ever use. We could export power.
The current Casablanca solar panel project is in a 5-year study where they will gather data. If the entire 250 plus miles of canal were lined with solar panels, it will be more than enough to power Gila River Indian Community.
And of course, green credits, carbon credits, they're in high demand. We know that there are outside entities that would be very interested in purchasing this green renewable energy. So we think it's the wave of the future. Certainly it's the wave of the community's future.
Not only will the solar panels create energy for the community, but it will also help in combating water loss from the harsh Arizona sun.
The initial reports demonstrated that we could reduce evaporative losses by about 46%. More recent data is coming out suggesting it could be as high as 65%. If we were to cover the entire 16 miles of the Casablanca Canal over a 25-year period, we'd save 9,000 acre-feet of water, conservatively, because we think we're going to conserve more water through evaporative savings because we believe it's now going to be greater than 46% reduction.
There are two parts to the Casablanca solar panel project, separated by the highway that bisects Gila River. On one side of the bridge, solar panels are supported by galvanized steel, coated in zinc to prevent corrosion, while on the other side, they are supported by ungalvanized steel.
As part of the demonstration project, we're using the same steel. The only difference on the east side is we galvanized it. And again, the intent is to determine rusting of the steel, what will be the effect over a 25-year period. We'll measure it for 5 years. What kind of effect does the water have on the steel? Raw steel versus galvanized.
Every part of this project was carefully thought about to maximize the use of the canal and the land on which it is on.
The idea behind solar panels, first of all, in Arizona, all this sunshine makes perfect sense. But beyond that, Governor Lewis was really interested in it because it's compatible with the values of the community, of using the resources that nature has provided to us, being a good steward of the land. We looked at, and Governor Lewis concurred with us on, the idea that the canals already exist, so the land is already disturbed. If we put solar panels over a canal, we don't take up any additional land.
This project, which is set to deliver power to the grid in September 2024, was funded by the Biden administration through the Inflation Reduction Act. In an effort to make Gila River more self-sufficient, they are taking the means of producing energy into their own hands, while simultaneously transitioning from fossil fuels to green energy. For ICT, Daniel Herrera Carbajal.
Native Forward Scholars Fund is expanding opportunities for Native students. With retired tribal college president Dr. Sandra Boham on board, they're helping students navigate college and beyond. Here's ICT's Renata Birkenbuhl with more.
Providing a wide range of scholarships to Native students is the main goal of Native Forward Scholars Fund, but guiding students after receiving their award is just as important. As the new Chief Operating Officer, Boham now works for a former tribal college staff member as they strive to match the best college scholarships with the right students. CEO Angelique Albert once worked for Boham at Salish Kootenai College.
We've had it open for 14 months, and it was important to us that we find the right person. And what that means to us is that we needed someone whose personal value systems matched the values of our organization. And we wanted someone who was extremely passionate about serving Native students. And we feel that that person is Dr. Boham.
Native Forward funds $11 to $15 million worth of scholarships every year. Plus, it genuinely, actively supports students along the way.
We have served about 22,000 students in the 55 years. All 500 tribes in every state in the United States. And what's exciting about Native Forward, it used to be called the American Indian Graduate Center, but now it is Native Forward with new branding. And the organization provides scholarship assistance for undergraduate and graduate programs.
Boham will oversee the organization's finances, technology programs, human resources, and also work with the scholarships team.
We were looking for someone that had extensive experience in working with students from the ground up. So in addition to us being a scholarship organization, we provide a wide range of support services and resources to our students. So we needed someone who understood the college going process and what it takes to get our Native students to and through college.
Boham recently retired as a successful 8-year president of Salish Kootenai College, the national leader in student retention and graduation rates among tribal colleges. During her 45-year career, she has worked in adult education, workforce development, faculty, registrar admissions, financial aid, academics, and administration. Historically, Native Forward funds students studying law and education, but now its reach is much wider.
So we fund students where they are, in TCUs, Ivy League schools, wherever they want to go and get educated in the degree fields that they want. We do educate a lot of scholars in the health fields and then also in business, but also we're seeing a pretty big trend and an uptick in environmental sciences, language preservation.
Lack of financial aid for college students remains one of the biggest barriers for Native students. Native Forward applicants only apply once instead of filling out several different scholarship forms, a big advantage in a busy student's life.
That's a very small piece of the need that's out there, but it can make a huge difference in a student's life when they get one of those scholarships. And so, I encourage students to apply.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. Until next time, stay safe, my relatives.